Is American Sign Language verbal or nonverbal communication? This table right here explains how oftentimes people mix up verbal with vocal communication. So American Sign Language is actually verbal, non-vocal communication. Writing and texting are as well. Um, Vocal verbal communication are speaking words and sentences, and the subject of our studies this week is nonverbal communication, which typically people think it's only body language, but notice that there's much more to it. Eye behavior, touch behavior, even time behavior. And there is such a thing as nonverbal vocal communication, such as laughing, grunting, and sighing, um, volume variation, rate variation if you've done speeches. Those are all nonverbal vocal aspects of communication. Some characteristics of nonverbal communication are that it's continuous, so you can actually say that we communicate nonverbally 24/7, even when we're not intending to communicate. For example, when you are quiet in a corner of the classroom and that leads people to believe that you're snobby or that you're grumpy. You might not have tried to communicate that. Maybe you're just shy, but people have interpreted that. So anytime anyone has the potential to interpret our behavior, whether intentional or not, that can be seen as nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication can be often unconscious. You may be communicating without meaning to. It is more believable, meaning that whenever we have mixed messages, people tend to go for your nonverbal signs. Think of the situation where someone asks you, "How are you doing?" and you say, "Fine." Do people go by your words or by your tone of voice? Nonverbal communication can be ambiguous or have different meanings for different people, and is more effective when used in relational messages. For example, you heard the old adage that says, "Your actions speak so loud I can't hear your words," right? When someone tells us they love us, but their actions don't say the same, what do we believe? There are many channels or cues to nonverbal communication: chronemics, or the use of time; prosemics, or the use of space; haptics, communicating through touch; vocalics, or paralanguage, which is the vocal aspect of nonverbal communication; kinesics, or body language; facial expression; olfactics, or smell and communication. Think about your memories, and how smell can communicate and how they use that in marketing; self-presentation; and oculesics, or eye behavior. Let's talk a little bit more in depth about some of those. There's a lot of aspects of paralanguage and communication, but I love this chart on how people interact in a conversation. This first pattern is the turn taking. So when person A says something, person B responds, and vice versa. The second chart is when person A says something, person B doesn't even think of their response until person A is done talking, and vice versa. It's more of a slow paced communications pattern. Maybe you fit in this category. And the third category is the interrupting pattern. Person A says something, person B jumps in before person A is complete. Oftentimes people think that this is always a rude communication pattern, but sometimes person B is validating person A. So consider where you are and consider how you can better support people in your life that are in different communication patterns when it comes to pacing. If you are in the third pattern and you have someone in your life that is in the second pattern, it's important that you give them time to think of their responses before trying to jump in to help them out. A very interesting concept is ma, which is a Japanese mindset Ma is more than a communication style. Ma is empty blank space that can be not fully translated if you think of last week's untranslatable words. Um, it's a blank space, it's a break, but it can also be silence or a nonverbal communication style in Japanese culture. Uh, when this silence in Japanese culture may indicate disapproval, it may indicate just trying to be thoughtful and not give a rash response. And it's not only common in nonverbal communication, but it can be observed in Japanese art in the ink drawings, where the negative space is just as important as the painting to fill the figure. And it's even seen in other types of Japanese art, such as Japanese opera. So, silence is an important part of nonverbal communication, and you have a chance to practice it in an activity in this week's module. Um, Chronemics is also a form of nonverbal communication. Chronemics, or time behavior. Your textbook talks about monochronic and polychronic cultures. United States is more of a monochronic culture, meaning time oriented, task oriented. Some cultures like Hawaiian culture, Brazilian culture is more polychronic or relationship oriented. It doesn't mean that we don't have deadlines in cultures such as Brazilians, but just their relationships come first. For example, when I was going to work in Brazil, we worked 9 to 5, but it was more likely that, and we had a 1 hour break, that people on special occasions, such as someone's birthday, would have lunch together and take a 2 hour lunch break. But it was also much more likely that people would not leave work at 5 and would stay as needed. So relationships come first, but you still have commitments. Prosemics is the study of space. Edward Hall, who we mentioned earlier and was also responsible for the simile of the iceberg in culture, was the first person to consider this idea of personal bubble and how close can someone get to me depending on their relationship and how that varies from different cultures. So this is an example of personal bubbles in American culture, how close we get in a social setting versus in an intimate relationship. Haptics is the study of contact in terms of nonverbal behavior. Some cultures are more high contact, so where touch is more acceptable and common on interactions. Other cultures, like British cultures, are more low contact. Examples of high contact cultures are a lot of the cultures that are closer to the equator, such as Latin and South American cultures. Facial expressions are also one of the cues in nonverbal communication. So are hand gestures. You're going to have an opportunity to explore those in your Drink Trip language discussion post. When it comes to body language and self presentation, it's important to notice that standards of beauty fall into this category and they vary greatly from culture to culture. I love this picture of a Maori woman where facial tattoos, including the facial tattoos in the lips, are considered beautiful. And it's a standard for that culture, so it's super cool. Don't forget to check out on this week introduction page some additional videos, such as the history of social dance and Amy Cuddy's famous TED Talk on the power of nonverbals to get more valuable information on nonverbal communication. And that's it for today. Thank you.